Sneaky starts.
Woo! Sneaky starts week 3.
Numero trace, which is 3 in Russian, I believe.
Week numero Russian trace. That's how you say that.
Russian trace. But, yeah. So, Leo, give the viewers a little rundown. I mean, we don't want to bloat too much, but give them a rundown of our week 2 sneaky start.
Yeah, week 2 sneaky starts was it was very successful for us. I don't remember everyone we listed, but we definitely had some very successful picks we threw out. We threw out Torrey Smith, who had a touchdown in a nice little game. Kenny Britt was a desperation name we threw out, and he had 6 fantasy points, I think, which is not bad for someone you might have flexed as an emergency. Gio Bernard was one of our. He was like probably a poster boy.
Points.
Yeah, he was actually like very helpful. Sterling Shepard, 11 fantasy points.
Over 100 yards for Shep.
Over 100 yards. We definitely had more than that. Who else? Who am I forgetting?
Stephon Diggs.
Stephon Diggs. He was a sneaky start. That's right. Oh yeah, because
he was eating.
He had only had 10 fantasy points coming out of week 1. You might have. I think he was on most people's benches, blowing up probably.
Yeah, which would be unfortunate, but Stephon Diggs is the real deal, guys.
Yeah,
he is the real deal.
He's
dare I say legit. The next Antonio Brown?
I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, you can say that if you like.
Yeah, that's. I feel like we had. Dennis Pitta.
Dennis Pitta was another one we threw out. He had a nice little week.
Pitta-Pan.
Yeah, there was probably a couple more we're forgetting. I kind of took a victory lap on Twitter whenever it happened. So if you follow us, you kind of already know the names. And if not, that's just a sample of the success we had. And just know that now you should absolutely start every single player we name, because it is.
I mean, we won't get 100% of them right,
100%.
But probably like 99%.
99%, and it'll just be a rounding error, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And if we ever get somebody wrong, we'll come on and we'll be the first to say it. But week 2 was a very successful week, and we're back with week 3, sneaky starts, to help you guys make those tough roster decisions, because we're getting to the nitty-gritty of the fantasy season. We have already had a lot of injuries. There are probably some rosters that are in shambles, need to make some desperation plays this week. So we have a list for you guys. Sneaky starts. So, one, Leo Khaleesi.
Yes.
Start us off. Start us off strong.
Yes, to sort of reestablish, this is your first time watching Sneaky Starts. These are players that they aren't obvious starts. They're someone that would perhaps be sitting on your bench, but we're saying, hey, this is someone that you should basically throw in your flex, or is maybe actually like a no-brainer RB2, but like you were kind of trying to get cute about it. Basically guys not to sleep on that we're trying to like stay ahead of, or, keep like hammering home as we name some of the same guys multiple weeks in a row. So we'll start off with, I guess we'll do quarterback first. I don't know. Why not? And the first quarterback I'm going to name, I'm going to go with the least obvious first, because I feel like we're going to name 4 guys, and the other 3 are kind of, I've seen them all over the place, but I haven't seen this guy's name much of anywhere, and that's Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. He's at home, which you usually want in your streaming quarterback, against Chicago, who sneakily have allowed the 30th most fantasy points, or the 3rd most to the quarterback. Carson Wentz lit him up. Brock Osweiler lit him up. And as we saw tonight against the Patriots, Brock is actually maybe not very good. So the Chicago defense got hurt actually a lot in the Carson Wentz game. They had a few guys go down to injury.
The Wentz game.
The Wentz game.
As it will be dubbed.
As it will be dubbed. So this is actually, I think this is pretty sneaky for sure, because I haven't really seen Dak's name get thrown out that much this week. But it's like such a good matchup, and he's at home, and I don't know, I could see this being like the true Dak breakout game that everyone's been waiting for.
Woo, Dak to the future, baby.
Dak to the future.
I like it. Dak Prescott, sneaky start. So the other 3 we're going to say are a little bit more obvious. So who is the first obvious quarterback streamer of the week?
I think the most obvious, and he's a guy that's probably owned, so like he's on the edge of being sneaky, and that's Mariota.
Yep.
But he's, at home against the Raiders, who have been very generous to the quarterback. A sort of like asterisk to
That's
put
an
on it.
understatement. Yeah.
Yeah. An asterisk to put on it is it's been against Drew Brees and Matt Ryan. And Drew Brees is like, he's elite. He still is. So getting lit up by Drew Brees, I wouldn't. At least Drew Brees at home is elite. So that's, getting lit up in that situation, I wouldn't really hold against him. But Matt Ryan kind of came into their house and made fools of them, as you probably know very well.
Yeah, that was a completely ugly game, and Matt Ryan looked like the best quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
I would argue that Matt Ryan looked better against Oakland than Drew Brees, which is kind of that's a little bit worrisome because Brees did look amazing, and then Matt Ryan, I mean, he was picking apart the Oakland D. I mean, so Mariota, you probably own, like you said, but if you, at this point of the season, if you get a chance to start a quarterback or a wide receiver against Oakland, go ahead and do it because they have a lot of new bodies. They're kind of trying to gel together. We don't really know if it will happen at any point. So they're suspect right now. So take advantage of that because it might not be like this the entire season. So right now, Mariota, we like.
Mariota. Another one would be Ryan Tannehill. This one kind of scares me because Tannehill is not very good, but he's at home. It's against Cleveland, who we have seen is very susceptible to the quarterback. It was really scary going with Flacco last week. He was one of the guys we threw out. And you were watching the first half of that game, like, oh, God, this isn't going to work. The Flacco's doing nothing. This is ruined. But then the second half of the game, he just kind of came alive and it worked out. And he actually had a nice little week. So it's really just following that trend of any quarterback against Cleveland. And Ryan Tannehill's up next, so hopefully he can deliver.
Yeah, I mean, Tannehill, the game against Seattle to start off the season, let's be honest, it was kind of a shit show game. But I don't think Tannehill looked awful in that game. I mean, he scrambled around. He made some plays with his legs. Passing generally wasn't there, but playing Seattle in Seattle, I mean, you can't really fault him for that. Last week, I mean, it was a perfect game script for a quarterback, right? They fell behind by 20, 30 points.
Yeah.
I'm not ideal for the team, but fantasy-wise, perfect. And they just threw the ball the entire second half, and it was effective. They actually almost made a comeback. They had the ball in the last possession. They had a chance, and they just missed against New England. And they're playing in New England, who, as we saw tonight, whether it's Brock Osweiler not really being an effective quarterback, but New England's defense has looked surprisingly stout. Not surprisingly, I think a lot of people expected them to look stout. But yeah, the fact that Miami kind of tore them up in the second half, obviously they weren't going full pedal to the metal. They probably playing a lot of prevent. But it was effective, and I think Gase and Miami might look at it and say, okay, basically through 2 weeks we've got nothing going on the ground. We can't run the ball whatsoever. Arian Foster's already hurt, all right, to the surprise of nobody. Tweaked a groin. So now they have this committee that consists of Jay Ajayi, who is already kind of on the outside with the coaches.
I'm on the outside.
And I'm looking in.
Go on.
And then Kenyon Drake is a part of that. And I guess Arian Foster, it's looking like he's doubtful this week.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be some sort of combination of Ajayi maybe getting the early down work, Kenyon Drake getting, rotated in, maybe Pede, Damian Williams. I mean, geez. It's going to be a mess. Their backfield's going to be a mess. And I think what is going to happen with the Miami offense is they're just going to trend towards this heavy pass attack. I mean, they have the weapons now with Parker being supposedly healthy. And they were able to throw the ball with ease. I think that will continue. That's their strength as an offensive team. So they'll run the ball maybe a little bit just to break up the defense, but I think they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. So Tannehill, I mean, even though you look at this game against Cleveland at home, you might be thinking, well, it's obvious, but it is scary because what if they get ahead? I mean, Cleveland's terrible right now. They get ahead. They might be pounding the ball, running out game clock. I don't think that's going to be how they operate their offense anymore. I think they realize, okay, if we're going to win games, we need to throw the ball 35 to 40 times a week. And I think that's going to be the same this week. Tannehill should be probably QB 10 to 15 range, I would guess.
Feels safe. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an obvious one.
One last quarterback we'll throw out. Joe Flacco.
The Flack attack.
Flack
yeah.
attack. He's on the road, which is a little less than ideal. But it's against the Jaguars. We just saw Phillip Rivers just go nuclear all over them. So you kind of hope maybe Flacco can do the same. And it's almost like a little bit of like a not long term, but a play thinking ahead, because then next week he's at home to Oakland. So it's kind of like, gut through this Flacco week and hope he can be okay. He should be fine. The Jaguars defense does not look scary. But then he gets Oakland at home next week. So it's a little bit of like hopefully you had him last week for Cleveland too, and then you can just kind of keep him and just keep him this week, play him again next week, and get a few weeks out of your streamer, which is, it's always nice when you can do that.
Yeah, he was a popular name before they played Cleveland because of his schedule. I mean, people knew that he was playing Cleveland, followed by Jacksonville, followed by Oakland, all soft passing defenses. Mm-hmm. So he was able to take advantage in Cleveland. I mean, it wasn't as easy as we hoped it would be, but because they fell behind by 20 points, he was able to throw the ball. I mean, similar to what Tannehill did in New England. He was able to throw the ball a lot in the second half, which saved his fantasy day.
Yeah.
And he seems to have found a connection with Dennis Pitta, who we mentioned already at the beginning of the show. Pitta and Flacco have always had this connection. Pitta hasn't played in a couple of years. This goes back to 2014. Now Pitta's supposedly healthy. His hips, he has 2 replacement hips. He's out there leading the team in targets. So Dennis Pitta, Joe Flacco, that combination make for a good streaming possibility.
That is a nice little streaming stack. We'll get into Pitta a little bit later. I think that's probably it for our quarterbacks. Was there any other quarterbacks you wanted to throw out, or should we move on?
I'll mention this because in draft season he wasn't very popular. He is a QB1 overall right now. He should be owned, but I was able to pick him up this week as a streamer. So that just goes to show that he might not be owned in every league. So if Matt Ryan is out on the waiver wire and you need a streamer, then he is clearly the no-brainer number 1 choice for this week, ahead of all the guys we've already talked about.
Yeah.
Because he's going against New Orleans, who have a porous pass defense, and he has weapons on his offense. I mean, his running backs are getting involved in the passing game. Jacob Tammy's been involved. Obviously, he has one of the best receivers in the game in Julio Jones. Even if he is a little dinged up, he usually ends up playing. I think he's perpetually questionable. So Matt Ryan, if for whatever reason people just don't believe, he had a really bad year last year, maybe scare some people away, but he is a QB1. He has put up big numbers against Tampa and against Oakland, so maybe not great pass defenses, but he's going against another weak pass defense. So fire up your Matt Ryans this week. Definitely start him. I mean, if he's your second quarterback on your team, then I would start him over a lot of guys this week.
Yeah, I got to think he's near the top of the list.
Yeah.
And he's great this week, and next week is kind of a good see how he does against a decent defense because he gets Carolina. Yeah. Because after that, in week 5 and 6, he's on the road both weeks, and it's Denver and then Seattle. And neither of those are great situations for a quarterback. So it's kind of like, see how he does in Carolina. And if he still looks great, then it's like, all right, maybe this is a new Matt Ryan. But if he struggles a little bit in Carolina, then it's like, nope, bench him through those 2 weeks and with Denver and Seattle, because then he's probably get eaten alive those weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you could hope that he lights up New Orleans this week, and then you have the QB number 1, and you just try to trade him to somebody.
It's always hard to trade quarterbacks. The market just
really
isn't
is
as strong, but maybe you can try. Maybe someone is like, they have Russell Wilson and they're just like, oh, what do I do? And maybe you can do something about it.
Yeah, because it's so easy to stream quarterbacks. We've talked about this time and time again. So, I mean, if you could get any value from Matt Ryan, really, after 3 strong weeks, you probably could. There are teams out there that still love the quarterback position. I mean, they do score the most points. I mean, in every league, you'll probably have a few people that really value the quarterback position, that will draft a couple of quarterbacks, that will hoard quarterbacks on their benches. So, it's an attractive trade piece to have at your disposal.
Indeed. Let's move on to running backs. Your sneaky running back starts. Is there anyone you'd like to start with here?
Uh, the obvious guy is Chucky Sims.
Chuck Sims, yeah.
Chuck Sims. I mean, people should be starting him. He was probably on your bench last week, most definitely on your bench last week. But this week, you should be firing him up, especially if you're a Doug Martin owner because you lost that spot in your lineup. So you just plug in Sims. I mean, that's the whole point of having a handcuff. Now, there are a lot of people that drafted Sims that don't own Martin. So he might be your, third, fourth running back option. But I think he will be the workhorse back. He will get the first chance to be that guy in Tampa Bay with Martin out. I know there have been rumblings of Jacquizz coming in, taking some of the touches, but he has been mediocre throughout his entire career. He's like a 3.5 yards per carry back throughout his entire career. Sims has been in the offense for a while. He's kind of been chomping at the bit to get his chance. Last year, he didn't really get that opportunity. This could be it for Sims, so I think they want to see what they have in Sims. So definitely start Sims, I mean, as a RB2 or maybe a flex play. But again, that's more of an obvious start.
Yeah,
borderline sneaky. Borderline sneaky.
It's like it's a little high, but it's like maybe you're getting cute. Maybe, yeah, like you didn't know Doug Martin and you don't need to start him, but it's like, no, at least flex him because he should have a very high floor. Just based off of like the volume he's going to get in this game. And the Rams defense they have really good pass rush, but their run defense isn't as good as I think they get credit for. So far, adjusted for schedule, they're the 22nd best run defense in the league, which is not great.
Hyde tore them up in week 1. C-Mike did a lot of damage against them last week, so
yeah,
could be big for Sims.
Let's move on. Speaking of C-Mike,
let's just transition right into C-Mike.
A little segue. Right C-Mike, keep an eye on the injury report, but it's looking more and more like Rawls might not play. He missed practice both Wednesday and today, Thursday. Depending on when this video goes live, you will know if he missed practice on Friday or not. But even if he doesn't, even if he comes back and he practices Friday, I'd still be wary of Rawls having any significant role. So I think C-Mike is a definitely a sneaky start this week going against San Francisco, who are 30th against the run, so not a very good run defense, despite bottling up Gurley, because they sold out to do that. With the Panthers, Fozzie just ran all over them.
Fozzie Whitaker, baby.
Fozzie Whitaker. Yeah. So I like C-Mike as a nice sneaky guy in this game.
Yeah, and what did PD say? C-Mike's been shot out of a cannon?
Shot out. He does look, he does look like markedly better than Rawls so far this season, and that might have more to do with just like Rawls is still getting back in game shape. He's not quite 100% yet. You can look for Rawls probably honestly like during week 5 being like a buy low guy we're screaming about because he's probably not going to do anything this week, and next week Seattle gets the Jets, which the running back will probably struggle against, and then it's their bye week. And so by then, the Rawls owner is just probably going to be close to dropping him, and you can get him for like very free, I imagine.
Yeah, well, he might just end up on the waiver wire. Might be one of those. He's going into his bye week. I'm just going to drop him. I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
So yeah, but C-Mike definitely a good sneaky start this week. He has looked like the best running back in Seattle through 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He's probably one of those guys you're sitting. If you have him on your team, you're sitting there thinking like, am I really going to buy into this C-Mike hype again, But this time he's actually showing that he can do it in the regular season for more than like a quarter at a time. He's been consistent. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of preseason, he's looked good for about, 6 games, albeit 4 of them were in the preseason. So C-Mike has C-woke. And now he should be a C start.
C start.
Yeah, C start.
Let's move on. I'll throw out a guy. You didn't super agree with me on this one, and I didn't even like him as soon as like a couple days ago. But I've come around, and that is Isaiah Crowell. It's a little bit concerning when you look at what his production actually is. He has the big fantasy numbers, but a lot of them have come on big runs and kind of garbage time parts of the game. But and that is concerning for his long-term prospects. But for this week against Miami, the game script will likely go where they are down very, very much, and there's probably some garbage time that's nice for him to run in. Miami, adjusted for schedule, have the worst run defense in the league, so he shouldn't have too much trouble finding room, and they won't be able to throw it at all, probably, because it's Cody Kessler throwing it to Terrell Pryor as his number one receiver, and Gary Barnage, who like couldn't come back to life even with McCown there. So
no.
Crow will be like the
Rest in
focal point
peace.
of this offense. Maybe we'll be wrong, and it'll actually be all Duke Johnson, and then we'll finally get the Duke game. But
Yep.
I think I'm on Crow this week as a
Yeah, I'm kind of 50-50 with Crow. I mean, I see the appeal. You look at their offense right now, you look at Hugh Jackson, and you think that he's just going to deploy a run-heavy offense. You know, he doesn't want to expose Kessler to, making mistakes, turning the ball over. He's probably going to play a safe road football game, which means that they're going to come out and they're going to try to run the ball early. My concern is that Crow, he's looked good in small periods throughout the season. Now, if you go back to week 1, he had 62 rushing yards and a touchdown. Good fantasy numbers. But 40 of the 62 yards came in the last drive of the game when they were already down by 3 scores. Mm-hmm. And Philadelphia just wasn't playing defense.
Yeah.
All right. Last week against Baltimore, he was getting bottled up most of the game, but he ripped off that 85-yard touchdown run, which is not his MO. I mean, he's not like this burner that's just going to, rip off these 80-yard touchdown runs. That's not really what he does. He's kind of this grinded out type of running back. So he had the 85-yard touchdown run. He didn't do much else after that. So if you take garbage time out, you take that 185-yard run out, and I don't like using the narrative if you take out their best play that they're mediocre, but you do look for some degree of consistency. And basically his yards per carry drops down to like the 2 range, which is not very good. I think I saw the stat that if you take those plays out, he has something like 26 carries for 60 yards. So not very good whatsoever. But then again, we look at Hughes' track record. We look at what he has to work with right now, and they're going to try to win the game. Running the ball could be what they have to do to win the game. So I think Crow is a sneaky start. I think people are probably starting him this week as well because of what he's done.
Yeah.
It seems like he's a solid running back 2 now. So I like Crow. I can see that panning out.
You know what, other running back
bullish
has a very low yards per carry average if you take out their big home run hits? Todd Gurley. So you basically just said that Isaiah Crow is Todd Gurley. Boom, book it. There it is. No, I'm with you on all that stuff. It's about the matchup and the very likely game script that they're just completely down and out by halftime. I mean, who knows? Maybe Cody Kessler is actually good, and that ruins everything for Isaiah Crowell. But
yeah,
we will see. That's why he's a sneaky start and not an obvious start.
He's a sneaky start.
Yeah.
But to your Gurley comment, now that I read probably the same article that you read, that if you take away his big gainers, then his average drops to like 3 something. We're not talking about, he's not dropping to sub 3 yards per carry. I think that's probably the same for just about any elite back.
All right.
Oh, let's just go take their 80-yard touchdown runs out, and Gurley had a number of really long runs. It's kind of, I was saying it's not Crow's MO. Well, that's part of Gurley's package, right? He's known to rip off these long
Maybe
runs.
now this is Crow's MO. Maybe he's finally come to life, and this is what he actually is.
Crow woke.
Crow woke.
There it is.
All right. No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not going to get in this argument where I think Isaiah Crowell is good, because that's not what I'm saying at all.
Well, you never know.
You never know. Maybe.
Last two are probably more on the sneaky.
These are like
spectrum.
very sneaky. Like, you're not going to feel good about either of these.
Yeah. So let's go with the CAP in Carolina.
Cameron Artis-Payne. Yeah, this one is kind of just being a little contrarian. You know, there's the Fozzie Whitaker love after last week, but last year when Jonathan Stewart was out, Cameron Artis-Payne was Cap was the guy. He averaged 4.6 yards a carry during that span, so he was good too. And the coach even came out and said he's going to be the guy. They're going to go back to Artis-Payne. So you start him hoping that's true and it's not just a committee with Fozzie. But because if he is the guy, then that's, he makes him a nice flex. The problem is Minnesota is actually like a very good defense. They're looking like they're like just across the board run defense, everything. So he might not have any room to run in the first place. So that's why it's like I don't feel great about it. But if you're like, this is like a really deep league and you're just like destitute and you can't even find like a second running back to start, like he's might be on your wire and you could do worse.
Yeah, I mean probably the case for a lot of teams right now because, I mean, we've seen it in both of our leagues where the team wasn't deep to start in the running back position. Then with this last week, a couple running backs go down. I mean, we lost Amir, we lost Doug Martin, we lost Adrian Peterson. I mean, they were just dropping like flies. So there could be a team that is just, I mean, they don't have anybody. So Cap is one of those guys, you know, that he will be involved. Whether or not he's going to put up, you know, the numbers that you want, it's a different story.
Right.
But he will get the touches, and that's what you're looking for in fantasy. So artis-payne, the pain train.
The pain train.
Sneaky start. The last guy that I have on my list here, he was drafted as a starting running back. He's off to a slow start. We've mentioned him before as well, but he's going against the putrid Washington run defense this week. I think you should start Rashad Jennings. Last week, he got bottled up by New Orleans. He only had 27 yards on 13 carries. He got dinged up, and I think a lot of people are a little bit worried with Vereen's usage, how it's kind of spiked.
Yeah.
I think Jennings is still the guy. McAdoo leaned on him heavily at the end of last year, and Jennings actually had an okay week one.
Yeah.
He didn't get the touchdown, but he almost had 80 rushing yards. If he would have scored in week one, he would have had one of the better fantasy performances of the week. Last week was disappointing, but he's still the guy in New York. He will get the early down work, and he'll probably get around 15 carries against Washington. Maybe a few looks in the passing game, even though that's more of Vereen's thing. But I think he will be the goal line guy, and he has a bounce back week. I can see him putting up like 80 yards and a touchdown this week.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah, I like him as a nice little sneaky guy. I might want to bench him after last week, but he got hurt last week, so it kind of explains why he lost so many snaps. And it sounds like he's going to play this week. So I like it.
Flex him.
Boom. Let's move on to wide receivers. That's enough running backs. We have quite a few wide receivers. Maybe we'll do this a little more rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Wide receivers, let's just kind of rattle a few off. We already talked about Oakland's porous pass defense. So we mentioned Mariota. Well, who is his number one target? Tajay Sharp.
Yep. Everything we said that makes Mariota good makes Tajay good. Just a suspect, soft secondary. He's the number one target. as you grimace at that. He's got Sean Smith, who's apparently the worst corner in the game.
Yeah, well, Sean Smith is giving up 1.02 fantasy points per route, which is dead last.
That's really good.
Fantasy-wise, I hope Tajay does well.
Right.
Because we're mentioning him as a sneaky start. Real life-wise, I hope Sean Smith rebounds and shuts him down.
Well,
I mean, come on.
We'll find out.
Come on,
so, yeah,
Smith.
Tajay might be sitting on your bench, but we're saying if you can, throw him in your flex.
Tajay Sharp, start him. He had a down week last week, so you might be kind of off Tajay. Like, oh, week one, this whole wide receiver on Tennessee thing, I'm done with this experiment. Well, you shouldn't be for at least one more week.
At least one more
fire
week,
up your
yeah. I think Sharp's going to be up and down all season, but this is one of the weeks where it should be up. Another guy, this one's maybe a little more obvious, but maybe you were also thinking you'd wait and see what happens with it, but Philip Dorsett. Now with the injury of Moncrief, he steps in as the number 2 in this offense. And they're playing San Diego, which outside of Verrett is a good matchup, and you expect Verrett's going to be on Hilton most of the game. And so that kind of leaves Dorsett as the wide open number 2. I guess some of the concern is that maybe they go more like 2 tight end set heavy, but even then he should play a ton of snaps and get a lot more opportunity than he's ever seen. And so he's a nice guy to just throw in your flex and hope for a big play. He profiles a lot like T.Y. Hilton. They're almost the same player. So he's like a nice big play threat. So he's a nice guy to throw in your flex and hope he can just catch some bomb from Luck.
Yeah, don't forget Dorsett was a first-round draft pick, so they have high expectations, and they're trying to hype him up in the media. They're saying this is his chance. We need Dorsett to really step in and be that guy, and we're going to give him every opportunity to be that guy.
Yeah.
So, if you drafted Dorsett, I know he was kind of a popular late-round dart throw, and the narrative was that, okay, they're going to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, and if Hilton or Moncrief get injured, he is the next guy up, and that's exactly what happened. So Moncrief's out for 6 weeks approximately. Dorsett should, have his chance to shine. Again, more of a popular choice because of the injury news on Moncrief, but you definitely should give Dorsett a chance this week against Santiago.
Moving right along.
Next up.
Moving right along to the next one. This is a guy we've named every week, and we're going to name him again because he hasn't truly blown up yet, so you might not be willing to just fully lean into starting him, and that's Sterling Shepard. Once again, he's got a soft matchup against the Redskins. You might be worried about Josh Norman, who in the last 2 weeks played sides of the field instead of just shadowing the number one. Well, this week they came out and said, nope, Norman is going to be shadowing Odell Beckham, which leaves Breland on Shepard, and Breland's been kind of getting lit up so far all season. So that's a good opening for Shepard to come in and just feast on him. And all Shepard's been missing is the touchdowns. He's been super efficient, made a lot out of his workload. So this could be the week where he finally gets in the end zone, and then everyone's like, whoa, who's the Sterling Shepard guy who just dropped like 20 fantasy points this week? So throw him out there.
Sterling Shep, third week in a row. So far, he's produced over 10 points both weeks. So we might as well keep on riding the train.
Yeah.
Riding the train. All right, moving on quickly. Let's go rapid fire a little bit here.
Boom.
Next up, we have, since we talked about Matt Ryan, we might as well talk about the Sanu Canoe. Might be a little sneaky start this week because, he doesn't have the name appeal that Julio Jones has for some reason. I don't know why. But the Sanu Canoe, he's the second wide receiver in the Atlanta passing offense, which has looked highly efficient. Sanu already had a big week 1 game against Tampa. This week they're going into New Orleans, who has struggled a little bit with the second wide receiver. We saw it last week with the guy we just talked about, Sterling Shepard, putting up over 100 yards.
Victor Cruz putting up 91 yards also, like the aggregate of their number 2, which is kind of feasting on them. And then, Crabtree week 1, your boy, putting up 87
My boy
yards.
Krabby. Yeah, and then he had that 2-point conversion, which won them the game. So
that's the important part. You get points for if they win the game.
Well, you should. Well, you got 2 points for that catch because it was a 2-point conversion. And I know the whole 2-point conversion thing screwed up your keeping score segment last week.
I know, I didn't look for it at all this week, too. I was like, nah, I'm not going to bother with that. So maybe you'll call me out again and be like, oh, where's this person? We'll see. So Sanu is just like the pretty obvious going against a very soft Saints secondary. Julio is kind of banged up. Who knows how much shape he's in. So it's possible that Julio isn't fully himself, and then Sanu is getting more of the target. So, again, somebody might put on your bench, but no, he could feast this week.
He could, yeah. Who else you got? Keep him coming.
This one we're not going to go too in depth, which is Mike Wallace going against Jacksonville. It's just pretty simple. He's done pretty well so far with the Ravens. I worry a little bit about how many targets he's getting. It's not like he's getting a ton of targets. He's just doing a lot with them. But as long as it's happening, I say keep going with it. Sometimes in the week soon we'll be saying that you should sell Mike Wallace, but it's not yet. So
and in case you didn't realize, Mike Wallace is the wide receiver 6 right now.
Yeah, he's having himself a little renaissance. So
a renaissance. I mean, let's the top 6 wide receivers: Benjamin, Snead, Diggs, Fitzgerald, Cooks, Mike Wallace. Boom.
Man, that is like the last thing the Zero RB lobby wants you to see, is that the top 6 wide receivers are like all guys that went late. That besides Cooks. Cooks is the only guy, and even then, Cooks was kind of getting like brushed under the rug. People were like, I don't know, maybe Cooks.
But Wallace, he has 3 touchdowns, and Flacco keeps on talking to the media about how he loves Mike Wallace. Yeah. I mean, that could be fluff, but it seems like he's trying to back it up with his play. He's targeting Wallace in the red zone, or in the end zone at least. Some of these targets are like deep passes to the end zone. But, I mean, he came out this week and said, I'm going to keep feeding Mike Wallace. I think that was his direct quote. So, I guess he's the number 1, or kind of the co-number 1 with Steve Smith, who's kind of always the number 1 in Baltimore, the rotting corpse of Steve Smith. So Wallace,
start him. Let's move on to the next guy, Tyrell Williams. Just going up against a suspect Colt secondary. There's word that Vontae might be back, but Vontae, if he is back, might even be on Travis Benjamin. Who even knows who he's on? He might just play one side of the field because there isn't an obvious guy to shadow. So Tyrell, just against this in this very good matchup, is a guy that is worth hiding into your flex if you're not super deep. He looked good last week on that one 40-yard touchdown he took to the house.
He was kind of bouncing off defenders too. I mean, he does have the body type of the wide receiver that Phillip Rivers likes to throw to. He kind of profiles as the number one wide receiver in San Diego right now. Mm-hmm. Benjamin is more of that kind of gadget type of wide receiver where he'll catch some short slant patterns, he'll catch some screen passes, and then he just runs with the ball. And then he'll go run down the field on a couple of routes as well because he's a shifty, small wide receiver. So yeah, Tyrell, shifty.
Next, I'll let you talk about this next guy because I know he's kind of your poster boy, and that's Devontae Parker.
Oh yeah, Devontae Parker. I've come around on Devontae. I was up and down on him all off season because of the news around his hammies or his legs in general. I mean, his quads, whatever it is, he's always hurting something. And they actually called him out on it in the preseason. Gase came out and said, "Look, man, you got to do better. I mean, you have to take care of your body because this is ridiculous."
Yeah.
But Devontae Parker, he was a highly touted wide receiver when he was drafted in Miami. He was supposed to be their guy last year, but again, preseason he hurt himself, wasn't able to play for the majority of the season. During the second half of the season, he kind of came on as their top receiver. And he profiles as his ex-receiver in the Adam Gase offense. And last week was his first game of the season. So if you're looking at his stats and you're like, he's got 10 points on the season, what are you talking about? He didn't play in week 1, guys. Last week he came out, 13 targets to lead the Dolphins, including a red zone target. So he's getting, they've only had a few red zone targets in the game. So he leads a team with red zone targets with 1. So Devontae Parker, over 100 yards, 13 targets. I mean, really, we talked about how, or at least I talked about how I believe that Miami's going to completely shift into this pass-heavy offense. I think we'll see Tannehill throwing the ball almost 40 times a game, which is might not be the best recipe with the pieces that they have. But Gase loves these type of receivers. We've seen it. He had DT in Denver and Alshon Jeffrey last year in Chicago, who, elite level wide receivers when Gase had them. This year, that could be Devontae Parker. And I think we mentioned on the show yesterday, part of winning fantasy championships is kind of getting ahead of this blow up. Right. If you got ahead of the Stephon Diggs blow up, you're sitting pretty. But I think, Parker has always had a ridiculous high ceiling. The upside has always been there because he's freakishly talented. There were some concerns about his route running and some concerns about his injury history. Mm-hmm. But when he's on the field, he could be that ex-receiver in Adam Gase offense, and that means he's going to get fed, right? So he could turn into
Demaryius Thomas, Alshon Jeffrey.
He's going to be both of those guys combined into one. That's Devontae Parker.
Demaryius Jeffrey.
Demaryius Jeffrey Parker.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. So start Devontae Parker this week. Flex him at the very least. If for some reason you're looking through your league and you realize a Devontae Parker owner is not even playing Devontae Parker, I would even go out and try to make a low ball offer. You're really going to trust this guy's legs? Come on, man. Devontae Parker. He doesn't really have the appeal yet. There are a lot of question marks around Devontae Parker. Go out and get him. Start him.
Get him.
Get him.
Next up, this is sort of a conditional one, and so you're going to have to sort of keep an eye on what happens with Brandon Marshall. But if Brandon Marshall doesn't play, or if he's
Greg Salas.
Or if he's Greg Salas. A player on a different team. Or if he's a real game time decision, if it's looking really sketchy with Marshall, throw out Quincy Enunwa. Going up against the Chiefs, who surprisingly adjusted for schedule, have been the most generous to the wide receiver, 32nd. I guess they haven't really faced any elite wide receivers yet. They got a little bit of Keenan Allen before he
they faced Hopkins last week, right?
But they haven't really faced an elite passing offense, I guess, is one way to look at it. I don't know. I didn't come up with these schedule adjusted numbers. Ask them. Quincy Enunwa,
Don't give away that. You're supposed to just, take this as our own metric.
This is
The
our own
stash
bench
metric.
stash metric. Yeah, Quincy Enunwa, it's just like, if Marshall misses or is there as a decoy, then Enunwa will see a ton more targets. And he did a lot with his targets last week, now a week ago. If he hadn't gotten kind of shooken up in that game, he might have done even more with it. So
Yeah.
he's a nice sneaky start in that situation. We got two more guys. These are if you're really desperate, if you're just like,
throw them out.
this is like 16-team league, you've been riddled with injuries, you apparently don't know how to draft, and these are the options you're left with. I'm just going to like throw them both out at the same time because neither are worth getting in too deeply. Kenny Britt, my favorite, and Terrell Pryor, former quarterback. And it's just Kenny Britt, he's the number one target, it looks like, or at least the most productive target on the Rams against Tampa Bay, who they're kind of profile as they're a good run defense, but not a very good pass defense. So that kind of means that the Rams can be forced to throw. Enter Kenny Britt, who's been productive through 2 games. And then Terrell Pryor is he's the number one guy in this offense right now.
He's the only guy.
He's the guy. It's him and Gary Barnidge. And, the good news with Pryor is because he's like, this kind of freak athlete a little bit. He just kind of needs one big play. We saw that in the preseason, that like deep touchdown he caught. And then he like was blowing up Twitter for a day. And the Miami secondary is not good. It's really bad. So all it will take is some garbage time touchdown in the fourth quarter, and Terrell Pryor was worth a start. Again, I don't like strongly recommend this. This is like if you're really in trouble.
Well, I mean, these guys are both owned in our 12-team league, so I could see a situation where somebody is, they're desperate. It would really have to be a desperation play for Terrell Pryor or Kenny Britt. But hey, why not?
Why not? Let's move on to the tight ends.
Woo.
We'll start with the most obvious name of the bunch, and we mentioned him earlier, Dennis Pitta.
Yeah.
Just got, how many targets did he get last week? Like 12 targets last week?
12 targets
12
last
targets,
week. Yeah.
Caught all of them, I think. No, he didn't catch all of them. He caught most of them.
He had over 100 yards last week. Didn't score a touchdown, but if your tight end is getting over 100 yards receiving, then you're doing well. Okay.
Yeah, touchdown.
I mean, if that's what he's gonna, if he's gonna do that on a consistent basis, and I know it seems unlikely, but there is a chance that Pitta is the number one receiving option in Baltimore,
based
at
off
least
the targets he is,
target-wise. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Wallace is that big play guy, but the sort of moving the chains guy, it's Dennis Pitta. He's kind of what I think people hoped Kamara Aiken might turn into, and that didn't happen. It's Dennis Pitta. And so if he's out there, go get him. And if you have him, there's probably a very short list of tight ends that are honestly worth starting over him.
Yeah, I mean, he was a very popular waiver wire ad this week, so he might not be out on your wire, but if you have him on your roster and you're like, should I start him? Yeah, you probably should. I mean, unless your tight end is, maybe it's somebody like Jordan Reed or...
Like the obvious guys, like Reed, Olsen, Laney, I'd still start over him.
Yeah, Lane, especially against Oakland.
Probably Kelsey. The line is then like Julius Thomas, Eric Ebron. Like he's at that group. He's at like that group of guys. I would say.
I'd start him over Ebron, even though I like what Ebron has done so far. But Pitta, he could be. I mean, he's probably right in that tight end 6, 7 range right now. So he's a tight end 1 for sure.
Yeah.
Another guy who we saw shine on Monday Night Football in Chicago.
Trey Burton.
Tim Burton.
This one is just kind of a target thing. He got 7 targets. He caught 5 of them for 49 yards and a touchdown. Clearly, Wentz likes the tight end. We saw Ertz being productive week 1 before he got hurt. It doesn't sound like Ertz is going to come back this week for sure. So Burton's just a nice throw him out there. Like if there's just really if the options out there are really thin, Burton is a good. I feel like his floor is like pretty high. His ceiling probably isn't very high. He probably has a pretty low ceiling, but just based off of the target share, he's probably safe for 50 to maybe like 70 yards, and you hope he gets a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a situation where the Antonio Gates owner needs to go out and pick up a tight end quickly because the news with Gates kind of broke a little bit late, so you might not have realized that Gates probably isn't going to play this week. So if you already made your waiver claims and then you're sitting there like, oh shit, I need to pick up a tight end, Burton's out there, almost certainly.
Yeah.
There are a couple other guys, but I like Burton to pick up in a pinch.
Yeah.
Start him. Should produce because Wentz likes to kind of check down to those tight ends. Burton is the guy until Ertz gets back.
Yeah, we'll throw out another one. Jacob Tamme. This one, I don't want to say it's obvious, but his name's been thrown around a little bit. And it's just he gets New Orleans, who are also awful against the tight end. So it's just getting a piece of an offense going against New Orleans is kind of the play.
Yeah, 16 targets so far for Tamme, so 8 a game. That's third overall in the league, so he's getting targeted a lot by Matt Ryan.
Yeah,
and that's all you can really look at when you're, trying to evaluate fantasy tight ends. Are they getting targets? And Tammy's getting targets. He's getting looks in all areas of the field. So you have to like Jacob Tamme as a streamer.
Yeah, to be clear, I would play Tamme over Burton too. Like I'd go so far it's Pitta, Tamme, Burton is the order I'd play them in. And then the next guy, this is one that's probably right there with Burton for me. That's Vance McDonald. Vance. And it's not really chasing that 75-yard touchdown. I don't expect that to happen again. It's really just that he's playing Seattle, who so far this season are 26th against the tight end, and just over the last few years have always been weak against the tight end. The interior of their pass defense is just weak. It's either like the slot receiver or the tight end, whoever is sort of running up the seam there just seems to be able to eat. And so that's a play with Vance. Maybe it's Curley that gets more of it, but I expect that. I'm hoping Seattle offense bounces back enough to maintain a lead, and then the 49ers are throwing a lot, and I don't expect Torrey Smith to be able to get open against Richard Sherman. So I think Vance is kind of the main beneficiary of playing catch up.
All right, and the guy we close out our segment with. This is this year's Gary Barnidge.
2016 Gary Barnidge. We're planting our flag. If you listened to us this time last year, we called out Gary Barnidge like a week before everyone else. We were like, maybe this Gary Barnidge guy, and then he blew up, and that's when everyone else jumped on him. So we're calling him now Jack Doyle of the Indianapolis Colts.
Jack Doyle.
This one, it's mostly based off of the Moncrief injury for me. It's a combination of things. The first week, he caught 2 touchdowns vultured from Dwayne Allen, and at first maybe that's a fluke. But then week 2 against Denver, he out-targets Dwayne Allen too, and it's like, okay, that's a little bit concerning. And so now without Moncrief, it is fair to expect to go to a 2 tight end set, which means his snap percentage will go up, and he was playing 60% of snaps with Moncrief in, so it's possible it goes up even higher now that he's out. And he's already shown that he's, one of Luck's red zone favorites. He's out targeting Dwayne Allen for some reason. So Doyle, he might actually be what people were hoping Dwayne Allen was this year.
Coming out of nowhere, Jack Doyle.
So the bench dash flag is planted in Jack Doyle. You heard it here first. And if he blows up this week, and like the normal fantasy Twitter is like, oh man, Jack Doyle, gotta go get him. Like that's when you need to at them. You need to slide into their mentions and be like, "Yo, bench dash said it first. You need to rep us."
There you go. That's how you do it, and be like, "Look, last year they were on Gary Barnidge, the barnyard dog. This year, they've picked out Jack Doyle. Yeah. It's going to be our track record, right? Picking these seemingly mediocre tight ends that kind of come out of nowhere and just dominate the league. Jack Doyle, he's got a good name. Barnidge had a good name.
Jack Doyle sounds like he could be your plumber, which is what you're looking for in a tight end. You want that plumber name.
That blue collar, he works
very blue
hard.
Collar name, yeah.
Yeah. That's because Indianapolis's jerseys are blue, right?
There it is. Blue jerseys, blue collar, Jack Doyle. Bench dash analysis.
Doyle. Boom.
All right, that'll wrap up Sneaky Starts.
Screaming hot tight ends.